Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
Let's talk to our dude, Mr. Jake Boats, Conservation Warden for the great state of Wisconsin, who is joining us this morning. Jake, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Not bad, man. Not bad. It's been a little chilly this week and such, but it sounds like it's going to be a little bit warmer and that. Did you have a good, busy Memorial Day weekend?
It was busy.
Yeah.
It was good. There's a lot of people out. A lot of good people, a lot of happy people. I mean, there's always violators, but there's tickets written, but it wasn't too bad. It was just busy for us. Just a lot of different stuff going on with the parks and the ATVs and the boating accidents and a bunch of stuff. It just got to be a pretty long weekend.
Just by way of education more than anything, what do you, on a weekend like that, where will you write the most violations so people have a heads up for the future?
Yeah. So fishing licenses still, it's kind of early in the season, but still people with fishing licenses, boat, life jackets are a big one. And we saw a lot of like navigational lights. So you know how at night you got to have your red and green lights on, your white lights on. ATVs driving carelessly, so just going off the trails or like doing donuts in the middle of the trail, stuff like that. Helmets for kids under 18. Kind of a long list, sorry, but you know the big thing is safety. You know, is operating the machine safely is very important, and wearing the appropriate safety gear. So helmets, cutoff switches on your boats, life jackets, stuff like that. So most people have their fishing licenses. Most turkey hunters had their licenses. Everyone had a lot of the stuff they needed. It's more like summer's here, you're excited, and you're starting to rip around on machines you haven't driven in a year, and it's kind of careless, and that's where people get hurt or injured.
All righty. Hey, you ready for some questions from some listeners?
Yeah. Definitely.
All right. First one comes off the wall question for Jake. I believe this was from Rodney. The last few weeks, I've seen a bald eagle circling the village of Lake Hallie neighborhoods. What happens if the eagle attacks a little dog or a cat? Can we fight back to save the pet, or is the eagle protected?
So the eagle is protected. It doesn't mean you can't protect your animals, but it's similar to like if a bear or like any other animal. You can't just shoot at something or hurt something if it's not like an immediate threat. So they are protected by the Migratory Bird Act. They're technically still an endangered species and all that kind of stuff. Protected by the federal government. So you want to be careful with eagles. If you do have one flying around, stuff like that, it might be because there's a different carcass in the area, like a deer carcass, something like that they've been feeding on for the last few days. I've heard I can't say I've ever got a call that someone said their dog got picked up by an eagle, but I've heard the stories. So if that is something, like, I'm not going to sit here and say just, wave to your dog while it flies away. Definitely go and protect your animal if you need to, knock it off your dog or get in front of it or harass it away. But you can't just, like, let's say, shoot it or hit it or something just because it gets close or it gets into the area.
Mm-hmm. Next question here is from Surveyor Sam. A question for Jake. What's the benefit of the spousal fishing license? Can I still get it if I bought an annual license already? And do my trout stamps go on it?
Yeah, so the spousal fishing license is just that. It's just it's like a fishing license for both you and whoever your spouse is. And when you buy it, you'll link your accounts together. So like if you buy it on yours, then you can put in their customer ID number, and then it'll show up on their account. It's only good for fishing licenses, only good for an annual fishing license. So a resident annual fishing license is $20 per person. So for a spouse, for a couple, it would be $40. The spousal fishing license knocks off $10. So it's a $30 fee instead of like the 40 combined. So it doesn't include trout stamps. So if you're going to do inland trout fishing, you both have to get that. Or if you go to the Great Lakes or both, you both have to get those still. And if you've already bought your annual fishing license and your wife decides she wants to get one this year, your spouse, whoever that may be, then you just call our customer service line and they may be able to assist you with kind of reimbursing that so you can save the $10.
Gotcha. And speaking of, fishing licenses, and if you haven't bought them yet, we've got the free weekend coming up next week, but it's not just for fishing. It's also for parks too, right, Jake?
Yep. Get into the state parks. I think they usually call it like this weekend, the free fishing weekend, but now I think they more call it like the free fun weekend or just the free weekend or something like that. Basically, there's a lot of items where it's free, just like free admission to state properties, don't need the fishing licenses, stuff like that. The important thing is it's not like a free-for-all though, so all the other rules still apply. Walleye length limits or panfish bag limits. When you go into the parks, you still have to like have a camping reservation if you're going to camp. You don't just get a camp for free. If you don't just get to go to the booth and get a free Powerade or anything like that. You still got to buy everything. You just get free admission and free fishing license.
And that's usually the first full weekend in June, right? I know like Memorial Day weekend was a little bit earlier this year, so that kind of changed things up a little bit.
Yeah, it's usually like the second weekend in January, first full weekend in June. Kind of, they make sure to separate it from that holiday weekend for sure.
Mm-hmm. Jake, you mentioned, boater safety and such too. Can you talk a little bit about, life vests? Is it required that you have to wear them at all times? Does it just have to be in the boat, like one per person, a flotation device? What are the rules when it comes to life jackets?
No, that's a great question. So life jackets, the way you're going to see them in the regulations is called a PFD. They call them personal flotation devices. So every person on a watercraft needs a wearable PFD or one wearable life jacket per person per watercraft. And when I say watercraft, I mean everything from your blow up $100 paddleboard all the way to a 40 foot cigarette boat. Everyone has to have one wearable life jacket on board. In the state of Wisconsin, you do not have to wear that life jacket. So if I went out with my whole family, there's 4 of us, we'd have to have 4 life jackets on the boat. None of us would have to wear them, but if I had to present them, I'd have to present 4 of them. And the other important part of that is that those life jackets or PFDs have to be appropriate and in good condition. So, I can't use my kid's 30 to 60 pound life jacket to count for me, and it doesn't count for them to use my adult extra large PFD. So you have to have life jackets that are appropriate for the size and the person, as well as it's getting more common to see the inflatable life jackets, especially the fishermen wear them around their neck. And whether you have the manual one where you have to pull it to inflate it, or you have the dissolving tablet in it, you have to make sure that it is functioning each time you go. So you don't have to pull on the CO2 cartridge because obviously that would ruin it. But those have like a red and green. What do you want to call it? They have a red and green indicator that says if it's good or bad. Green good, red bad. So you always want to make sure that before you go boating, if you have those inflatable ones, you open it up or look through the little peephole and make sure it's green. Because if it's red, it's one, it's not going to save your life, but 2, it's not going to count as a legal PFD because it can't do its job.
Mm-hmm. So like, this might be a stupid question, but like a seat cushion, some of those big seat cushions, that does not count as one, right?
So 16 boats, any boat 16 foot or longer, 16 feet or longer has to have those seat cushion life jackets or PFDs. Those are required again. They're mandatory, 1 per boat 16 feet or longer. We encourage you to put them in all of them, and to be honest, they work really good as a butt pad, usually on the smaller boats anyways. But those are really important because usually on boats 16 feet or longer, there's more than one person. And I think the spirit of the law is that a lot of people don't wear their life jackets. So if someone falls in, at least you have something that is there that can float, that could potentially save someone's life. So you put it out and throw it. So you just need one per boat, and it's not wearable, so you can't, like you said, count that towards your one wearable per person per boat. I did check a boat, this was a long time ago, up on Lake Holcomb, where there was like 5 people in the boat, and they pulled out like 8 throwable PFDs. And they're like, well, these count. I'm like, no, they don't count at all. So they were taught incorrectly by their parents, so I worked with them, but I've never seen so many throwable cushions on a boat before.
Hey, Jake, correct me if I'm wrong here, which I think I probably am. I thought state law in Wisconsin, kids 8 and under, if they were on a boat, had to have their life jackets on, but it doesn't sound like that's the way it is.
No, it seems, it kind of seems like that would probably be a good law to have. But no, in the state of Wisconsin, when it comes to our state boating regulations, it's just that someone 8 or under has to have one available to them, but they don't have to wear it. Now, I think we would all agree that we would strongly encourage anyone 8 and under or that isn't very good at swimming to always wear one.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the law, so that's just an encouragement. There are other states, Minnesota being one of them, I think, where there is an age restriction like that. As well as when you're on different federal water bodies like the Great Lakes and such. The Coast Guard has their own boating regulations because it's a federal water body technically. I think there is a rule like that out there, but never worked out there on the Great Lakes, and we don't live close enough there for me to know off the top of my head if that's a requirement or not.
That's, just to kind of wrap it up, you mentioned the Great Lakes and such. I mean, is there sometimes a little confusion on what regulations are like, when it comes to a body of water like that? You mentioned, Coast Guard and that, but, fishing wise, I mean, those regulations are all the same. And well, I mean, I shouldn't say all the same, but there's specific regulations. But is there ever any kind of like confusion between the two sides?
I would assume you can't just blanket and say no, because there's always going to be, confusion at some level from someone. But for the most part, what's pretty nice, at least in this part of the country, is that most states have adopted the federal boating regulations as their state regulations. So a lot of what the feds want or what you would find on a federal water body, for the most part, is what states are also enforcing as their regulations. I think a lot of that comes down to like the DNR gets a lot of funding from the federal government with boating money, and it's a big part of what keeps our agency afloat, to be honest, is the federal boating fund. So then we adopt a lot of their regulations and are compliant with what they're looking for. So when you go out on the Great Lakes and stuff like that in other states, a lot of it is the same, but as a caveat, every state has different hunting, different fishing, different trapping, different ATV regulations. So it's really, really important when you go to boundary waters like the Mississippi or the Great Lakes, when you go to Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, or even further out west, that you take that extra 5-10 minutes when you get to these new areas, grab the regulations, maybe stop in at a sports shop and just ask questions. Because, we obviously, as wardens, we use our discretion when we contact non-residents and people out of state and stuff like that. But ignorance or not knowing the law isn't necessarily an excuse every time.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of people that come here and they're just like, oh, well, in Florida, we can do this. I'm like, well, not in Florida, bud. So,
hey, Jake, a quick question about the Great Lakes, Superior and Michigan, border Wisconsin. Do the DNR have authority on those lakes? I think international waters 3 miles out. But do you, other than the shore, when you get to the shoreline of Lake Michigan and Lake Superior, does the DNR enforcement authority end and then it goes to federal or whatever it might be?
Good question. No, it's different than it's different than the ocean. So because the lakes are still basically, you can get out to the Atlantic Ocean through the lakes, but they're still owned by the respective states, the states. So we know what the shape of Wisconsin is like, but in reality, we own up to basically like half of Lake Michigan. And that's where our boating regulations and fishing regulations apply to. And then once you kind of cross the halfway point, then you start the Michigan rules.
What about Lake Superior?
Yeah, same stuff when it comes to Minnesota or Canada at some point. But the main thing is on those big lakes like that and on the Mississippi is that the states and countries are always communicating and making it as easy as possible for the general public to recreate. So it's not like, most of the time, it's not like you have to know this line and everything changes and you need passports and this and that. But sometimes it is, up in the boundary waters, you need your passport and have special documentations if you're going to paddle, across the country lines and stuff like that. But for the most part, on like a Lake Michigan, the Green Bays and stuff like that, your general like Wisconsin fishing regulations, boating regulations are going to apply to everything. And then we do have the authority to enforce everything. We have other like contracts or agreements with different states that allows us to do our job, like usually like one county in to the neighboring states. That's the way that we can like exercise our authority if it starts in our area and ends in someone else's area. So there's a lot of communication on that. The main thing is like if you go there, if you go out to Lake Michigan, great, or Lake Superior, utilize our traditional regulations. And if you're doing something really crazy like driving all the way across them, then you're going to want to reach out to the other states and find out what their rules are.
So in Lake Superior, it'll be a whole lot easier when Canada becomes our 51st state.
Yeah, you don't want to even, just drive up.
Don't need your passport.
Get on the boat, go right across. Don't even need that passport anymore, no. So.
Hey, Jake, really quick before I let you go, because we only got a couple days left, but the deadline to apply for that elk hunting license is coming up on May 31st.
End of the month.
Yeah, so just really quick, Black River Elk Range will have a quota of 4 antlered and 5 antlerless elk, and Clam Lake will have a quota of 8 antlered elk, split evenly between tribal and state licensed hunters.
Yeah, so they get divided up north because that's in the ceded territory. The hunt down here doesn't get divided up that way because it's not in the ceded territory in Black River. And I haven't applied, so I haven't looked at it. But you made a good point. There are cow elk that you can get tags for now. I'm pretty confident that still counts as your once-in-a-lifetime Wisconsin elk hunt. So I don't know if they're randomly selecting it, or I think you'll probably be able to put in if you want to try to pull for a bull or a cow. But just like as a reminder, like if you put in for the cow, which would still be an amazingly cool hunt, like I would do that in a heartbeat, you're probably never going to get a chance at a Wisconsin bull elk either. So just be mindful of that. I don't think, the chances of actually winning it are pretty low anyway. So if you can win a cow one, I think that's as much of a win to me.
Right.
But some people are very interested in the antlers, so just be mindful if you're applying.
Hey, quick, before we let you go, Jake, any update on the person or persons that shot that bull down in Jackson County?
No, unfortunately. We're still working on it. No, I guess when I say unfortunately, I just mean like I got nothing to put in through the court system or give you info on CCAP right now, but we're still working through our stuff. We're still doing interviews. We're still working on our leads. We still have a lot of information, to be honest. It's just a lot of these types of investigations, you end up utilizing different, warrants and different stuff, especially when it comes to phones and GPS and different stuff, and it just takes time. So as we go through the process, when I got some updates for you, I'll definitely share them with you guys.
All right, sounds good. Jake, hey, we appreciate the time as always, buddy. I know we kept you a little long, but we appreciate it.
This is my Thursday morning, so I like it.
All right.
Not BS with you guys. I can't complain.
Awesome. We appreciate it, bud. Enjoy the weekend. We'll catch up with you soon, okay?
Yeah, good questions today. Good talking to you guys. Have a good weekend.